All right, hey everybody, welcome to Rise Above It. Our episode here is with Ken Middleton, the author of Bamboozled, How Alcohol Makes Fools of Us All, also the founder of Dry 90. So we're just going to jump in and talk about how we can better ourselves, basically. So, Ken, thanks again for jumping in. The book was came out last August, right? How's that going?
Well, it's interesting, Stuart, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it greatly. Greatly excited to be a member here, a guest here on Rise Above It podcast. The digital version came out in April of
Oh, okay,
2023.
okay,
So I released, but you're correct. I released the digital version in April because I wanted to go ahead and get it out there, and get some eyes on it, get a feel for it. But the actual physical version wasn't released until August. So you're
okay,
100%
okay,
correct. Yeah. But I wanted to do April, just so you know, because I released it on April 1st, 2023. And the theme there was April Fool's Day. So
okay.
bamboozled,
Uh,
beguiled, being tricked. That was the
okay.
reason I wanted to push it to get it released on that day.
Nice. Did you do like an MVP, like a mini version with the digital too, or was the digital the same as the print that came later?
Same thing. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It was the full print. I had a launch team that helped with the reviews, but I did probably I think 3 months prior, I offered a chapter two for people to read, and you can still get it actually on
Yep.
thebamboozlebook.com. So
Nice, nice,
yes.
nice. So you
Yeah.
kind of was so when you had your Medium articles that you were writing years before that, what was a lot of that? Did that a lot of that go into the book too? You already had kind of
Absolutely.
practice? Okay.
So honestly, Stuart, to give you the full view, that was the reason and the impetus for me to write the book. So I had started Alcohol is Not Your Friend, which is the Medium publication that still goes to today, is open, has over 250 writers from the community that um, um, commit content to that publication, which is awesome. And I had been writing for 2 years and had created all these articles and all this information. And I said to myself, like, wouldn't it be cool if there is a place to get one single repository, one location where someone can get all of this information? And I just figured, well, this isn't out there, so why don't I write the book based on I can share. Anuff is written on the science around alcohol, like really. And when you think about my reason for writing Anuff and or starting Anuff and writing Bamboozled, it was around speaking to people who didn't really think they had a quote unquote problem, right, with
Hmm.
alcohol. It was about talking about not stopping drinking because you fear your life is going to be terrible. It's around stopping drinking because your life can be so much better without
Hmm.
it. That
Yeah.
was always the focus of ANF. It was not about alcoholism. It wasn't about people with alcohol use disorder. It was about this explaining the science around alcohol and how physiologically you can improve your life if you don't allow it inside of it, and giving you the specific science around it. So when I wrote articles for 2 years, I said, all right, I want to write a book that can combine all of information that I've learned and gathered over the 2 years for others to have access to.
Nice. What's great about that, it's in the Amazon description too, is it's for people who don't think they have a problem, but there's a lot of people who actually do have a problem and don't think they do. So it's a good tactic too, because
I
like,
know,
oh, I don't think I
right?
have a problem, and then all of a sudden I'm learning this stuff. Whereas if it was marketed for like this is for people who have a problem, so I don't have a problem, and I never read that.
Yep,
So that's really good that you're helping probably more people than you realize, or than you would have it had been targeted any other way.
absolutely.
So I really love that when I was reading the description, because that's the first step is to admit you have a problem, right? So
That's what
if
they
you're
say,
going through
right?
all the steps, or what have you, uh, and no, that's I love that tactic. And also, like you said, people who, if you generally don't have a problem, you want to nip it in the bud before you actually do as well
Well,
too.
there's that as
Yeah.
well. And I will tell you, Stuart, when I think about the reason a lot of the quit lit at times that I was reading during my alcohol conscious journey, and I use the term alcohol conscious. And to your point, I don't like to use the word sober. There's nothing wrong with sober, but for
Yep.
me, I don't prescribe to it because I feel like a lot of times it has a negative connotation of
Yep.
sobriety being the opposite of addiction.
Hmm.
So if you're addicted to something, you have a problem, then you're sober. So now you're cured. For me, it's around being alcohol conscious, which is like it's a derivative of being health conscious. So when you're health conscious, that doesn't mean you're addicted to fried chicken. It just
Hmm.
means that you know your life is going to be better
Right.
without
Yeah.
you eating fried chicken and cookies
Yeah.
and cake every day. So it's the same thing with being alcohol conscious. You're not addicted to alcohol. but your life is so much better without it. So when I was going through my journey and I would read some of the Quit Lit, Stewart, like Annie Grace's This Naked Mind, which is a great book. William Porter, Craig Beck's Alcohol Lied to Me, William Porter's Alcohol Explained. Sometimes I didn't see myself in the characters because they often would hit rock bottom. They also have some hardcore situation in life that really made them reconsider their life. And I didn't experience that. My life was pretty much fine. So when
Hmm.
I decided to say Bamboozled, it was around speaking to the people that lives were okay. And I wanted them to be able to see themselves in the literature. They can see that their life was okay, but they could recognize those small and subtle nuances that you don't, oftentimes you don't recognize, you can't see the forest when you're in it. And until someone can peel back the layers and show you that objective view, then you understand, okay, I don't think I have a problem with alcohol, but I can see these things happening. And now that I'm conscious of it, maybe there's a better way to live my life outside of it.
That's fantastic. And I love what you're doing because that was always my issue too, is that stigma of like, X days sober. It's just like, you're not saying, 35 days since I had McDonald's or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No, I love that. And you have that specter over you too. It's, if you're counting the days, you're still thinking about alcohol necessarily. Like, I don't want to think about that. I'm not thinking about McDonald's. It's not even part of my day. It doesn't even bother me. So I happen to be eating healthy, or I happen to be, not drinking. I want that to be my way, and not have that kind of milieu with that. It's always over me. So I think
Yep.
if people count that, and if that means something to you and you're actually in recovery, that's great. I want you to have your meaning, but you got to try to move past it. So I love what you're doing with Dry 90 too, and it's kind of you're obviously coming from with the science, and it's kind of a replacement too. I mean, you've got your exercise, you need to occupy your mind, and then a hobby too. Like, so was a lot of research going into that too, as far as you know filling that gap in your brain with something else?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so a lot of it was reading the science and understanding how it worked. And the other aspect was just my experience, like what I experienced going through it, right? So Dry 90, I use 90 days because sometimes people talk about the concept of 30 days. And I think your analogy in regards to having it hanging over you is very comparable to the 30-day thing. Because when it's 30 days, you can white knuckle it through 30 days. But you
Hmm.
know what happens? Every day you're thinking about drinking at some point and you're just
Yeah.
thinking, I can't wait till 30 days is up. I can't wait till 30 days is up. What I've learned over time is once you pass that kind of 66-day time frame, your mind isn't focused so much on, or you have the ability for your mind to start being re-engineered, and the chemical a connection that alcohol had that was it's definitely still there in the 30 days is no longer as strong in the 60 plus days. So what happens is the first 30 days, you're thinking about alcohol, you're thinking about alcohol, you're thinking about alcohol. The second, because physiologically it's still connected to you. The second 30 days, that connection is lessened. So you're not thinking about it as much. And to your question earlier about the substitute, you're giving your mind and your body something else to focus on that helps disconnect that connection. So in the second 30 days, you're severing that connection. And then the third 30 days, that 90 days, is when you're allowing yourself to build these new synapses, these new habits, these new connections in your brain. So then, to your point earlier, you stop thinking about it all the time. Is it somewhat going to be there? Absolutely. But does it have the same control and hold over you in the third 30 days as the first 30 days? Absolutely not. So that is right. From a science perspective, I tell people, if you really want to see what your life can be like without drinking, it has to be longer than 30 days. I think it has to be longer than 60 days. I think 90 days is for you really to see who you can be without it. And then I always tell people, if you decide to go back to drinking after the 90 days, that's cool. I don't care. That's your decision. But I think you need to give it more than 30 because that 30-day window isn't giving you the true feel of who you can be. And to your question about the science around substitutes, if you just do it without trying to replace that time and that you're going to have, it's going to be so much more difficult for you. But by giving yourself a hobby, it's going to create new opportunities for you to re-engineer the synapses for you to focus on other things. By exercising, running, it helps decrease your cravings, right? So that is the other side, because if you just try to do it without it, it's going to be really, really hard. And then by educating yourself, as we talked about earlier, a lot of people think, oh, I don't have a problem. But by reading that Quit Lit and starting to understand the science behind it and seeing, hey, I think that alcohol helps with my anxiety, but I never recognize the day after I drink and I'm in a social situation or even at work, my anxiety seems worse. A lot of people don't make that connection. When I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I think it's because I just can't sleep. I wasn't making the connection that usually it's the night that I've been drinking, and that there's that restlessness there. There's the endorphin and dynorphin mix, that your body is so agitated that it's hard for you to come down because it's so hyped because of the physiological nature of the combativeness of endorphin and dynorphin. So understand the science behind it. Then you can say, okay, this stuff is happening to me. I can see this is real. Now let me progress the time over that 60 and 90-day period. Now let me compare what was happening to me when I was educating myself and understanding what when I was drinking versus what's happening to me now. Do I think my life is better or not? So it's really around that 90-day period and giving science the time to really play itself out, and then you assessing the comparison between the two so you can make that educated decision or not.
No, I love it, love it. Yeah, it's right about like 60 days or like 6 weeks ish, I forgot, was when you can start to make new habits too, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
okay.
I mean, that's the
Yeah.
time frame, right? You really, and I tell people, when you decide to stop drinking, Stuart, and I think the problem that some people make is they just stop drinking and they think that's it. And they're just like, oh, I don't drink anymore. I'm good. And I tell people you can do that. And if you're successful doing that, then great. But what I often tell people, you've given yourself a gift by not drinking. And by doing so, you have the opportunity to become a much better version of yourself. So you need to invest in yourself. You need to invest in new hobbies. You need to invest in new ways of thinking to really allow that change to take place. If you just sit around and do nothing and not drink and then don't fill that time with anything, guess what? You're probably just going to be thinking about drinking and go back to
Yeah.
it. So you
Mhm.
got to find something to get your mind off of alcohol and focus on something else.
Absolutely. And what resonated with me was that it seemed similar to that 75 hard program, Andy
Yeah.
Frisella. And
Yeah.
I'd actually started that myself.
Did you make
And
it through? That thing is aggressive.
I what happened? I did my first 5K in 15 years. It was awesome. First in my age group, blah blah blah. I was getting
Awesome.
back into it, and my daughter wanted to run a 5K, and I did it back in high school. I did cross country and track and stuff,
Yeah, me too. Same
and
thing.
I just I was like, I got out of it. I don't know. You have kids and you move a couple times, and I was like, shoot, I got so hyped, and I went for a hike for Mother's Day, and I broke my ankle. So
You
I was
broke
about
your
10 I was
ankle.
about 10 days into it, and I was cruising. And the hardest thing for me, and I think maybe other parents might want to think about this too, was the evening workout. And so the morning one was fine. I went to
Yeah,
the gym when it opened at 5:30, and then you have to do an outdoor workout. I was like, all right, let's do it. It's perfect for summers. So we've got a 4 mile track right by our house. I was like, I'll bike. Kids can bike with me. So I try to do it, with them.
that's
But
awesome.
otherwise, like a 45-minute workout when I get home after I've been working a whole day, it seems kind of selfish, right? Like, here, let me go leave the house when you've been here all day. So I was involving them. I was like, this is an awesome idea. So my daughter wanted to run, or we'll run together, or we'll bike or do something. I was so hype about it, and then yeah, just totally snapped, tore tendons, and I'm almost back.
Okay.
So I'm using that as kind of like a just tracking. So I'm failing because I'm not doing the workouts. But no, I'll get back into it. I just don't want to rush it. But it was the irony of
Yeah.
right when you get back into it, and then it was snapped, and it was on a trail that we'd been on hundreds of times.
Wow. Just hit this ankle
Yeah.
touched the wrong way. It's so funny you say that, Stuart, because that was one of my goals as well, to run a 5K faster than I've ever ran it. So ran cross country, ran track in high school, loved it, really
Mhm.
enjoyed it. And I continued to run up until, I mean, I'm 44 right now. So I've been running since I was 14 years old for 30 years. So I never stopped running,
Okay.
but I had already been drinking. So trying to run and staying a regiment, like staying on your regiment when you're
Uh-huh.
drinking versus not, two totally different things. Like I would always run like 3 days a week, and I ran a 5K. I think I ran a God, what I ran a 20, 20, 30, 21, 30, 2036. So
Nice.
at any rate, I ran a 2036. And that was just, running 3 to 4 times a week, which was fine. So when I stopped drinking, I was like, you know what? I love running. I've been doing it ever since I was 14. Why don't I try to run a 5K faster than I've ever ran it in a long time, right? My
Hmm.
fastest time was sub 18. I don't know if I'm ever going to see that again. So I said, all right, I'm going to commit to running as much. And so I started running, and I was able to get a sub 20, which for me
Nice.
was really, really good,
Yeah.
right? At my age, to your point,
Uh-huh.
first in my age group, came in second overall. It was a great experience. And then I pulled my hamstring, dude, like
Oh,
a year ago. And I have not been and I'm just older, dude. Like you hurt me. And so
yep.
so take your time. I'm going to try to get back into it because I have this I have the times of every age group from 40 to 60 on the age group, which just so you know,
Uh-huh.
in the elite, there are 60 years olds running 21:49
Oh yeah.
5Ks, which is crazy. So anyway,
Absolutely.
I want to get back into it. But I think having that focus, something like that, like a goal that you're like, man, I couldn't have done it or I wouldn't have done it with my drinking self, it's that impetus that keeps you focused on going forward and not wanting to go back.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the you know youth sports actually, if you don't mind, because I think
Yeah.
I like talking about mindset, and I think it might be tougher for some people to do kind of the dry 90 or 75 hard if they didn't have a background of exercising. So the people you've consulted and talked with, uh, is it harder if they didn't do high school sports, or like, obviously I would say it is, but then is there a way to kind of ease back into that, or like, how do you talk to people who haven't done that?
That's a good question, Stuart. I would say this. It's not, it has to be a little more difficult because you haven't done it before. When you have a frame of reference from doing it in high school and understanding what it feels like and the pain that it takes to get through it, and then to go back to it, you know what it felt like before, so you can get back to it at once you're ready to recommit. But I still think it's very doable. So there's a
Mhm.
young lady named Dupe Ritherick who has a book, The Cocktail of Clarity. Great book, by the way. If anyone wants to read it or wants a great quit lit book, Cocktail of Clarity by Dupe is awesome. But at any rate, I share her story because she stopped drinking and never did anything in high school or prior, but had some friends that were committed to a charity to run a 5K and a 10K, and she started doing it. And she says that's one of the things that helped her to stop drinking. So now she runs pretty consistently 5 10Ks. I think she even ran a marathon. So was it harder for her than someone that ran in high school? Probably because she didn't have that frame of reference to look back to. But was she able to do it? And did that help her? Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
So I just tell anyone you need to do exercise is so important anyway, outside of just drinking. But when you stop drinking and you're trying to find something to help that entire journey, exercise is one of the key things that would make it so much easier for you.
Nice, nice. And I didn't mean to imply that somebody can't like start fresh when they're in their 30s or 40s or
Hmm.
50s and
Yeah,
start
yeah.
something new, but it's always easier like when your brain and everything is more malleable when you're younger to kind of like
Oh,
start those
yeah.
habits and stuff. And that's probably the one of the problems with like drinking culture in college too, right? Like you finally leave the nest and then you just kind of get used to that as, your reward for studying, or that's just that what you happen to do on weekends. And then, fast forward 20 years later, that's normal to you, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that we need to change. Not everybody goes to college, of course, too, but it is kind of that, I'm 18 to 22. That's just kind of the status quo, it seems like.
That's it, man. And the scary thing about it, Stuart, that I discovered from my research is that uh, the binge drinking that happens in college, it can have such a lasting negative effect. So from the age of 18 to 25, when you talk about being malleable, your brain is at its highest ability to learn and retain information.
Hmm.
And if you drink or do hard drugs, like hard drugs, you can do if you drink heavily and do
Yep.
hard drugs, you can do permanent damage to your brain, your hippocampus, your amygdala, that doesn't allow your memory to work, your prefrontal cortex from a decision-making perspective. That's why in it, because I it's interesting because I thought about this when I was like when I was in my 30s and I was still drinking, but I would look at friends of mine who were in high school And I was like, man, like they still kind of act like they're in high school. And you
Hmm.
hear the concept of arrested development. So people that drink at a very, very young age, let's say 16, 17, 18, and they drink heavily, it hinders your abilities of mind to actually mature and grow.
Hmm.
So as most people, when you're just living a regular life, you consistently grow, you learn, you look at things differently, your decision making, your prefrontal cortex matures over time, and you don't make some of those decisions that are just happenstance, like you're based off your feeling at the time. So what happens when you drink a lot, you decrease your body to think long term, right? When you're young, you're 16, you do something,
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know how I did that.
Yeah.
It sounded like a good decision at the time.
Yeah.
And then I got older, I'm like, that was a dumb, you look
Yeah.
back. But when you drink a lot, you hinder your body's ability to create that maturation to be able to look back. So that's why you'll see friends who are now 30 years old and they still think like they're 18 or 20, because when you do hard drugs and when you drink at a very young age, 18 or 25, if you do it enough, your body will not grow to the level, be it your amygdala, your decision, your prefrontal cortex, to be able to look back and emotionally be stable, and before you to see that long-term view of decision making versus what you are when you're 18, 19, 20 years old. So I tell it for me, the college thing is challenging, not challenging, but for me, sometimes it's a little what's the word I want to use for? I get torn, if you will, because I do feel like I believe there's a time in your life that you should drink. There's a
Hmm.
time in your life that there's nothing wrong with alcohol. Everything in moderation. You need to be
Yep.
careful. But I do think it's part of being young. It's part, you got to be smart, but I think there's a good aspect of it as well. Because I think for me, I'll be honest, and this is part of why when I think about my entire journey, alcohol was great for me until it wasn't great anymore, in the sense that it did allow me to say, I can be fun, I can be exciting. This is part of who I am. Now, there was a part of it that was a lie in the sense that I felt like I needed alcohol to be that person, because that wasn't the case. But what alcohol allowed me to do is see that that person was inside of me.
Hmm.
So then it gave me more confidence in a lot of ways. I think for some people, it allows you to recognize, okay, you can be a zany, fun person, and you just have to learn over time. You don't need it to be that person. But for some, it gives you that epiphany of, okay, I can be someone that I think thought I was, right? So I tell people that in college, enjoy it, be smart, don't overdo it because of the long-term ramifications. But as you mature and as you go into corporate America, you need to look and be cognizant. That's why I use the term alcohol conscious, because a lot of people drink and they don't think about it. You need to be cognizant, you need to be conscious, and then you decide how much you drink, and then if, when, and how it's time for you to taper back and not have it be such a strong and big part of your life.
What do you think is a good kind of self-discovery tool then? If alcohol can reduce barriers or inhibitions, if you will. Uh, Now what's the replacement going forward? Not
Yeah.
that we always default to just that, but
Yep.
would it be more like social sports because you're trying things and you're doing hard things in a group where you're vulnerable type of thing, or like what would you say to people going forward?
Still, that's a great, great question. And I think I haven't I haven't thought about that in detail, but I think for me, what would help people, and this is part of why I try to talk to college campuses, it's about giving yourself, you you have to educate yourself on the fact that alcohol is the easy button, and you can use alcohol to discover who you are and become a zany person, but then it can become a crutch. So it's almost like when I share Bamboozled and I try to talk to college campuses and share it with the student body, it's around, you can drink alcohol and have learn all these things and discover who you can be, or and it could make you fun and zany and blah blah blah, be able to talk to the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever your gender preference is, easier, right? Or you could know you can, this person is inside of you anyway, but you just have to do the hard work to get it out of you. And you can just do the social experiment, and you can do the social work of making it more difficult. Like, I don't know if you know Lewis Howes,
Yep.
yes, everybody knows Lewis Howes, right? I haven't heard of his I can't think of the name of his pod. What's the name of his pod? What's the Lewis Howes podcast?
Uh, uh, Greatness.
School of Greatness, the
School
School
of
of
Greatness.
Greatness.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I love Lewis House.
Yep.
So Lewis House talks about what he did. I think he said, I want to say it was his sophomore year, I think it was in high school or maybe right before freshman and last year in college in his freshman year, last year in high school, freshman year in college, where he was afraid to talk to females.
Hmm.
Like, look, like most of us are at
Yep.
18 years old,
Yep.
right? Like
Hmm.
terrified. Sometimes when you're 30, you're afraid, right? And said he committed to himself that every summer every day during the summer, he was going to go up and talk to a female. Now, would it have been easier if he just drank and went up and did it? Absolutely. But he's big on saying he never drank before. That was not his thing, but he did it himself, and it was hard. He did it without alcohol. It was hard. It was challenging, but that created that lesson and created that muscle in him that by the end of the summer, he had no issue talking to females. That is what it's like for college students. It's around alcohol is the easy button. So it's recognizing that. So you can use that,
Yep.
or you can do the little more hard work without it. And then instead of alcohol being the crutch and the reason that you're able to be this crazy zany person, you can do the hard work and know that's who you are internally, and you don't need anything externally to do it. So that would be my thing, is like, educate people need to be educated on, they don't need alcohol to be a to bring out that inner inhibition, but it is going to be more difficult, and they just got to be willing to do the work to go through that difficult time.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I definitely did the same thing in college too. And I didn't have a whole lot of confidence. And
Yeah.
I joined a pre-law fraternity, but it was a it was a drinking fraternity with a law problem, basically. That was the saying. Uh,
Okay.
I mean, it didn't have a house like a traditional Greek one, but there was lots of parties that revolved around that, and it just happened to have a law focus, and
Mm,
and that was just not good, and that was for me because I didn't have the confidence. It helped, like, oh, I'm getting into things that I was shy about or nervous, wanted to be professional and all that stuff, and so that was that kind of easy path too, and I wasn't developing like the bravery muscles, I guess, if you will.
that's
It's
it,
really
man.
tempting in a society to take that easy route. We've got so many different like easy buttons we can push.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm almost worried that with the rise of like THC drinks, stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
is there going to be an alternative? Like if if Gen Zs are more alcohol like avoidant, are they replacing it with something else? And I haven't actually done that research to see if oh, they're not drinking as much, and we're kind of like applauding that. Uh, are they actually doing something else? Like I don't know.
I've heard that, Stuart. I've heard
Okay.
it. Like, yeah, they're not drinking as much, but they're more apt to do marijuana, mushrooms, things of that nature. That, Silicon Valley, they're cool. They're good with them. Like, they at times suggest that you should do mushrooms, is right, to get to that new level of Zen. So but yeah, I think, considering your situation and where I think about my situation, like, it's just the education to kids in college, 18, 19, that, hey, you being nervous in a situation that you've never been in before is pretty effing normal. Like,
Yep.
as a matter of fact, something would be wrong with you if you weren't nervous. Like, it's a mechanism that we've used as Homo sapiens to stay alive. Like,
Hmm.
when you're in an unfamiliar territory, your spider senses go off because your body is saying there could be danger here and you could die. Like, it is normal to be nervous. So,
Hmm.
like, for me, to your point, Stuart, I thought, man, I'm not able to talk to girls. I'm nervous in these situations, these parties, blah, blah. What's wrong with me? There is nothing wrong with me. And it's educating kids at that age that there's nothing wrong with you. This is actually how all human beings feel. You don't need alcohol to get past it. You just need to go through the hard work of getting more comfortable in those situations. that is where I think we need to put our focus and where I want colleges to spend more time. So kids, like, you can drink if you want to, but you don't have to drink. You
Mhm.
absolutely don't. And giving them an alternative is kind of what I would like to see happen in society.
Where have you found, as far as like your your talks and consulting and people you talked with, as far as the likelihood of like early trauma leading to abuse? Is it still pretty high as far as the research goes?
I would say what's interesting, because when I think of the concept of alcoholism, I will say the trauma connection is I think is there for, because for some people they started drinking at a very young age, and the reality is when you start drinking at 16, 14, 14, 15, 16, you're going to become addicted faster, just like, because you're way more malleable and becomes more permanent when you're that
Mhm.
age. And the effect of alcohol on you at a younger age to make you need it more, it's just natural, right? So a lot of people, it's almost like nature versus, not nature versus nurture, but like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, in the sense of people that are in households where they have traumatic experiences often is connected to households where alcohol, drugs, things of that nature is more
Mhm.
easily available to them. So the question becomes, does the traumatic incident make them addicted to drugs, or is it the access to drugs
And
that
just that
just create
familiarity, right?
exact? So that
Okay.
there's that there. So I will say, so let's start. So that's one, right? So there clearly is connection. But what I would say for my audience in general and the people that I speak to, it often becomes, Stuart, not about a traumatic incident that happens, but it becomes with the progression of alcohol becoming a part of who we are naturally over time. So it's the 20s, you're doing it, you're having a good time, and I use the like, want, have, must, like you or you want, must, like a like, want, must. So you drink it because you like it. That's in your 20s. It's because, like, you're drinking it, you enjoy it, it makes you feel good, your body feels great, like you get the excitement that you usually get, blah 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 blah. So that's in your 20s. And then as time progresses and you drink more, then in your 30s you start to drink because, like, it's a coping mechanism. You're
Mhm.
dealing with work, you're dealing with your kids, you're dealing with life in general. And whenever something gets bad and you don't feel good, you go from you like to drink, right? That's the natural first progression because it makes you feel good. Then it becomes you want to drink because you feel it gives you that escape. Anytime something bad happens, or you're having a bad day at work, or you get in an argument with your significant other, instead of facing it and understanding why you got in that argument, or understanding why your week was bad, it's so much easier just come home and drink. It becomes that kind of crutch for you and makes your life feel good, right?
Yep.
And then with anything, and we've all experienced this, the more you drink, the more you need to drink. Your tolerance, right, goes down, right? And
Yep.
all of a sudden, like the endorphins, if you think of the science around it is very simple, right? Whenever you drink alcohol, it releases endorphins. It's that opioid that makes you feel good. Your body always wants to be in a state of homeostasis. It always wants to get to baseline. So your body can create endorphins naturally, but when you give it that external chemical, alcohol, it artificially creates these endorphins. Now,
Mhm.
your body's like, all right, what is going on that these crazy endorphins are coming out, and they're not natural. They're more than what we usually have. So then it releases dynorphins to counterbalance it. So it releases the dynorphins, and so now you drink alcohol, you feel good. Your body naturally releases dynorphins to get you back to homeostasis, and it's this constant battle of, all right, after an hour or two, you start to lose your buzz. Then you drink another beer. So because your body got you back to baseline, so you drink another beer to get you back to where you want to go, so forth and so on. So we're doing this the whole time. What happens over time is that your body starts to know, all right, Stuart drinks every day at 5 o'clock. For the last 5 years, Stuart has been drinking 5 o'clock every day. So your body's super smart. So your body's saying, look, I can wait until Stuart drinks at 5 o'clock and he releases these endorphins. And then I could say, all right, the endorphins come. Or if I know this is coming at 5 o'clock, why don't I just release the endorphins at 4:45? Because I know it's coming. So
Yep.
why don't I preempt it because I want to be in homeostasis? So that is when things start to get really scary. So what happens is over time, as you're doing this, this is why your tolerance goes up. And this is why, and this is where it goes from you like it in your 20s, your 30s, you're drinking it because you want to, because it's a part of what you makes you feel better, to in your 40s, and this is why it gets really scary. You drink because you have to drink. You must drink because once the dynorphin starts to preempt it, before you would drink and it will make you feel better. Now, when the dynorphins are preempting it at 4:45 or whatever, for whatever reason, you start to feel a lull, and you're like, Why do I feel depressed? Why do I feel like something's wrong? Like even if you didn't have a bad day, you start to feel that way. So now you have to drink to get back to baseline. And the more you drink, the more you continue that pattern, the more your baseline goes down and the more you have to drink. So that's when it goes in your 20s from liking drinking, 30s to wanting to drink, to your 40s, you must drink, because if you don't drink anymore, you will feel depressed. And that is how the concept of alcoholism starts slowly over time. It's that eight for most people, the average alcohol person that prescribes the alcohol use disorder is 41 years old. And that typically is anywhere from 18 to 22 years of drinking. If you
Mhm.
do the simple math, you start drinking at 18 years old, 41 22 years, 23 years later, it just, and that's where most people start developing a problem. It's between the age of 35 and 45, and it happens naturally over time because nobody goes out and says, I'm going to be an alcoholic. It slowly creeps up on you over time, and that's how it
Mhm.
happens.
Well, just like with weight gain too, that like you can't. It creeps up on you. You don't until like it's happening, and you're like, how did this happen? And it's so incremental, and I get that why people would want to have some kind of big weight loss pill or something because they finally realize that they have a problem, right?
Hmm.
And then is it going to take me 20 years to shed this now, or like like you're thinking all the thoughts, or even just subconsciously. uh so I totally get why people want to do that too. Like you finally realize that you got a problem, step one
Yeah.
or whatever it is, whatever the issue is, and it's like, man, my whole adult life basically was leading up to XYZ, whatever the issue is. So
Yeah.
I absolutely get it. Whether it's it's weight gain, or it's every any kind of substance abuse, or just bad habits in general. Like they don't happen overnight.
No.
Uh, and so
Very,
no,
very slow.
I love what you're doing too. Like you're trying to save people from falling off that cliff, like right before it actually. And it's not like once you're in your 40s or 50s, you can't reverse it. It's just that much harder too, because it's absolutely ingrained in you. It's you're if you're malleable when you're younger, it's starting to solidify, and then
Yeah.
you got to really chisel away then.
I mean, you got
Yeah.
19, 20 years of doing it, right? So once you
Mhm.
have that much time of habit of being formed, how much challenging is it for you to go back? And the other part of it, Stuart, from a physiological standpoint, is alcohol hits you so much harder when you're older. Like I tell anyone, once again, I don't preach, I don't proselytize over to say, hey, do not drink alcohol. I say you got to make the best decision for you. But I do believe at the age of 40, everybody should stop drinking. Absolutely. At 40 years old. And the reason I believe that is because when you get at the age of 40, the cost of benefit analysis of alcohol weighs so much more heavier on the negative side. You're not getting the same ROI that you were getting when you're 20s and 30s. 20s and 30s, you're having a good time. You drink a little bit. The next day is a hangover, but you get through it. But you're like, man, you know what? That was worth it. Last night was a movie, right? So you're like,
Yep.
yeah, that was. But in your 40s, you end up being Mel Gibson on the side of the road cussing out a cop because you can't handle your liquor the same way you think
Yep.
you could.
Hmm.
You thought you could drink 4 or 5 whiskeys because you could do that in your 30s. In your 40s, you're on your second, third whiskey, and all of a sudden your mind has gone. And I use the analogy, I often use like a car analogy. You got, and it's just, it's common sense. You got a car that's brand new off the lot, brand new off the lot. If you want to go out into a parking lot and do donuts with that car, you're probably okay. Nothing's probably going to break on that car. You can do
Hmm.
whatever you want to. But you take a 20-year-old car out into the lot and you try to do donuts with that 20-year-old, it's not going to work the same way. Your liver is so much old, like your liver is trying to get this poison out of your body. So when you age and in your 40s, your liver does not work as well as it did when you were in your
Mm-hmm.
20s. So guess what? That means that acetaldehyde of alcohol stays in your body longer. What does that then do? Gives you greater chance of cancer abductions being formed in your body, bigger chances of liver disease, all the different potential diseases that come from drinking, which there's so many of them that you had in your 20s, they multiply exponentially in your body if you drink in the same amount in your 40s. And that's why people don't understand the cost benefit of drinking when you're in your 40s versus in your 20s. It's just not worth it long term.
I love the car analogy too. It's simple but beautiful, and it's I guess I hadn't heard it or I never thought about that before. And it makes total sense, and it makes you think about the benefit of fitness too, because like I need to maintain, I need to like get the oil change kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
you got to keep things moving, and yeah, you want to keep that used car going. You like it, it's paid off, what have you, right? So you
absolutely.
got to take care
Yeah.
of it.
Can't keep
And
putting
yeah,
poison in it.
exactly. Like you put the wrong oil, or like you can't, if it's a premium, you can't put in the regular, 87. So no, I love it. You can extrapolate that, in 17 different ways to kind of, you know, put that back and have that meaning for you as a person. So I no, I love that. Uh, Back to Silicon Valley, like hyping up, drugs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think of the rise of kind of these beneficial drinks
Yeah.
now, the nootropics and ashwagandhas, all stuff like that? I kind of like the idea of making it cool, because can we replace the cool factor of booze and drugs? Like if this is something that's really hyped, and not like it's some Logan Paul prime drink full of garbage, but is
Right.
this something, is there possibility with some of these like Olipops and stuff that we can kind of do a little wedge theory and kind of sneak into the younger generation, and make that something that is status, right? What
Right.
do you think about some of these?
Give me like, I think I've heard of some of that, but I need more understanding of it. Are these drinks that have like THC in them? Like what are these
There are
drinks
some of
that have?
those, and
Okay.
not to talk about Bar None and our thing too much, but I don't want to carry those. I think that's I want it to be beneficial drinks only, and of course that has its own benefits too. But when we're talking that 18 to 25 age, you
Hmm.
can still stymie your growth. So I want to stay away from those. But we're talking kind of like the beneficial mushrooms, the lion's mane, the cordyceps,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
there's a lot of beneficial drinks, and kind of like the magic minds that you see on podcasts, all the stuff like that. uh I think there's something to those being hyped up on all these podcasts,
Yeah.
that I'd like it to become cool enough that people start doing that. Like, look at me, getting healthy, and it
Yeah.
seems nerdy or like goofy now, because we grew up in kind of the opposite. But uh I don't know. I like that as kind of a maybe a status flex. Like, I don't
I
know.
I think, Stuart, so it's part of, and I have a chapter in the book about this around why alcohol is so accepted by so many people, because it has become such an ingrained part of society everywhere with
Mhm.
everything. Like we see it as a young kid. You see it, you're at a birthday party, you see all the adults drinking, and you think, all right, when I become an adult, I want to drink. The other side of that is the media, it's television, it's ads, it's all of these things that we don't recognize as the concept of priming, which is that your subconscious is exposed to all of this information when you don't even think about it. You think that you're making the decision for yourself, but no, this decision has already been made for you because you've
Yeah.
been primed at such a young age to believe drinking is so cool. So when you think about, to your point, some of these healthier drinks becoming more in vogue, if you will, I love it because I feel like when we're young, we don't recognize when we're watching Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, all these people in movies, and they're always drinking.
Hmm.
Always. So there was a study done not too long ago that it says in the movies, I think 95% of movies have some form of drinking in it, like showing drinking, and it's always casual. You very rarely see them show the other side of drinking, of the hangover. It's
Hmm.
always this like, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Tom, would you like a bourbon? I was always laughing about that because, when I was younger, I was like, man, that's cool. And now that I'm older in I'm 44, and I've never had that happen in my life. And I'm like, has anyone ever had their boss ask them that they want a bourbon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a work day? Like,
Yeah,
no,
this
that
is Mad
never
Men.
happened. No, but they show it in these movies and you see it all the time. And so what happens is there was a study done in England that said kids who are exposed to drinking in movies, in commercials, I think it was something like 122% more likely to drink than
Yep.
kids that aren't exposed to it when they're young.
It's
So
manufactured consent. Absolutely.
that's it. So
Mhm.
if we could have more people showing the Ollie Pops of the world when they're in a movie, Brad Pitt drinking this as opposed to drinking a bourbon, I think there's something there that could hopefully help people start thinking like, I don't need alcohol to be this great person. I don't need it in my life. What if I chose these other alternatives? So I'm all about it. And I wish and hope and pray that that becomes something that we see more in television.
I think we can get there because it's back to your point as far as cinema. Like it was always, that Marlboro Man smoking back in the day,
Hmm.
and that's kind of gone away. I mean, there's still some smoking, but not really. It's more like if it relates to the character, and so they're actually making it, plot driven. So I could see alcohol slowly going away too. Uh, if we get some of these companies to work with celebrities, and some of them are growing well enough, kind of like alcohol or sorry, athletic brewing, that they're big enough that I think some can kind of get into that, or your liquid deaths. I think there's definitely potential for that. But it's interesting that you said one of our last guests, Sarah Risbach, was talking about how like the cosmopolitan drink was nothing in the 90s until it was everybody on Sex and the City was drinking it.
Of
And so
course.
like all the these women in their like 30s or somebody 20s to 40, it became part of the subconscious, or maybe consciously they wanted to try it. But I always wonder, like, was there some marketing crew behind this, like we need to get more people, more women drinking? Like, it was interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you think about the mommy wine culture, right? Like that
Mhm.
was a concerted effort from the alcohol industry to go after women drinking, and it absolutely worked. And it's like we don't. I mean, I didn't recognize it until I stopped drinking. But then when I stopped drinking and I just started to look at all the shows on TV and all the movies, it just popped out at me. How many times is alcohol shown in a very casual way, like everyone drinks all the time?
Mhm.
I don't know if it's the reality. Like if you, so back in the suggested amount to drink was 1 to 2 drinks a day to be considered healthy, right? I guess the CDC or whoever made that suggestion,
Uh-huh.
1 to 2 drinks a day. That's what they said was normal. And I was just looking at the information around this, and statistics were showing that if you drink 1 to 2 drinks a day, that means you drink 8 to 14 drinks a week. 70%, or actually, let me, because I got it right here. Yeah, 80% of the population of the US population drinks less than 6 to 7 drinks a week. That's
Mhm.
80%. 90% drink less than 15 to 16 a week. So when they show you on television that people drink every day all the time, it's not reality.
Mhm.
Everyone's not drinking that way. And so, but when you see it, you feel like you have to, you feel like you must do it because most people are. And that's the problem in which I think they're just like the smoking industry. And I don't know how they can regulate it, but there needs to be something that you don't have to show it in that saying you don't have to show it in every show all the time
Yep.
with everything that's been done. So I don't know how that movement goes forward, but I think if we can get more people behind it, I think it will make a difference.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's basically propaganda. It seems like when
Yes.
my wife and I had just recently graduated college. She got laid off from her job. It was like right around 07, 08. There's kind of the the little downturn there. We cut cable just to save money, and we just realized like how much we were exposed to, like just the
Yeah.
ads. And it was then when you see it now on your Amazon or Netflix or what have you, we still mute the commercials. We don't want our kids exposed to it or anything too. It's not a big deal. It's just kind of like it's not preachy or anything. It's just not just commercials, mute it. But when you actually listen to them, or you don't get a chance to mute it, like what the hell are we listening to?
It's
Yeah.
wild, man. Yeah, we don't recognize it. And
Uh-huh.
to your point, like kids are so much more impressionable than adults are, and we are very impressionable. But think
Mhm.
about children and how that affects them. It's so
Yeah.
important to be cognizant of that.
Yeah. So no, this is I want to keep it short and sweet. We've gotten some really good gems in here. I think what you're doing is just absolutely crucial. You're keeping people from falling off that ledge, and so I'll link like crazy for everything you're doing and promote it on every channel possible that I can. So
Awesome.
you're doing the necessary work out there. I appreciate you. Want to thank you for your time
Yeah.
and wish you the best out there. So let's keep doing the work and thank you, Ken, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Stuart. I appreciate what you're doing. The Rise Above podcast has been awesome, man. I think you're definitely giving people a new way to look at things. So keep doing what you're doing. If anyone wants to see the book, you can go to thebamboozledbook.com, bamboozledbook.com. Go check it out. Definitely love. You get the digital version and the physical version, and then dry90.com, DRYN90.com. If you want the 90-day challenge, check out those two websites and you have all my information there.
You want to give a quick little rundown on that, like maybe compare it to a 75 hard, because that has its own little app and everything too, and that might be, you know, is that too regimented for some people? Could they try dry 90? Like, how would you give a
Yeah.
little a quickie for that?
Yeah, I like to give flexibility, right? So basically, there's three things you got to do with dry 90. So, in conjunction to giving up alcohol for 90 days, right? You got to exercise. Like you and I have already talked about, it's so important to exercise. It reduces cravings for you. Like physiologically, it will make it easier for you not to drink if you exercise 30 minutes a day. You got to spend 30 minutes a day exercising for at least 5 days a week, I tell people. So there's that, right? And then the other aspect of exercise is that you're going to have a lot of free time. This is going to allow you to make up that free time so you're not thinking about
Mhm.
exercise. The other thing is you have to educate yourself, read some quit lit. It's so important to re-engineer your mind is you have to read to understand how alcohol is affecting you so you can compare and contrast and really understand it. And then the third is I say you have to do a hobby for 30 minutes a day. So you exercise for 30 minutes a day, you read for 30 minutes a day, quit lit, educate yourself, and then you do a hobby for 30 minutes a day. I give people flexibility. I would say you only need to do two of the three every day, right? So you decide what two of the three you're going to do each day, but every day you need to do two of the three to practice your hobby, read your quit lit, exercise. And I give an example of what it could look like on the website. And the purpose of it is that you really need to like invest in yourself from a hobby perspective, because as I shared at the very beginning of the podcast, your mind has been so used to alcohol that the chemical your brain has been re-engineered a little bit. So for you to make that disconnect from alcohol and connect it to something else, you need to find something else that your brain can latch to and can focus. And there, in my thing, pragmatically, I tell people choose a hobby that you don't think you could commit to with alcohol, whether it's about the discipline or the commitment or the time that you need to give to it, because that way you could see how much you're getting better at it. And then hopefully it becomes something that is an impetus for you not to go back to
Yeah,
drinking, something
I
that's
love it.
preventative, because you're like, man, I've learned how to play the guitar better than I ever thought I could in 90 days. If I go back to drinking, I think I might lose this. So choose a hobby that really is going to push you. It's going to cause you to think a little bit. But those three things from a flexibility perspective: read 30 minutes a day for 90 days, exercise 30 minutes a day for 90 days, and then do a hobby 30 minutes a day for 90 days. Two out of the three, you have a little flexibility, but that regiment will then increase the chances that after 90 days, you will recognize who you can be without it. And then you make the decision if you want to go back or not.
I love it with the 30 minutes too. There's three of those. That's 90 minutes. So another 90. I like that. And
Oh,
then
true. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And then the
Yeah,
quitlet is that it seems really simple, but that's actually kind of little affirmations too. So like it's kind of
yeah.
telling yourself you are doing the right thing. It's not that you're not just learning. It's affirmations. It's that positivity that you're putting into your mind and your body, and that's positivity you're putting out there for the community. So I appreciate you again. And then best luck with everything you're doing. We'll support Dry 90 and Bamboozled, and shout out to you there. So thanks for jumping on this early weekend morning.
Absolutely, man. Stuart, thanks for having me, buddy.
All right.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
again. See you.
All right, bye.